is the theme to the show. The show is all about you. Not you, but you and your stories. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I am your host, Jeff Seltzer, and I am once again ecstatic to be here hosting my own personal midlife crisis. This is episode number 41, I believe. Maybe it's 42. I don't know. We'll figure it out at some point. With that said, I did want to start off talking about some follow-up from last week's podcast. So last week's episode, which I really enjoyed talking with my friend Jamie Romano, we talked about Love is Blind. But one of the comments that we did talk about was the fact that I could possibly be the world's worst introvert. Super interesting, super funny, and like super weird and quirky, I guess, as well. I did get one question actually via Instagram, which was great to see from a friend of the show, Christina, who was on one of the earlier episodes. She had said, well, if you're not a Cubs fan, why do you always wear Cubs merchandise? Do you just like the way it looks, or like what's the deal there? I said, well, it's a great question. In honesty, I did live in Chicago for about a year and a half when I was just a little boy. Additionally, as many people may or may not know, Back to the Future is one of my favorite movie series. And in Back to the Future Part 2, the Cubs won the World Series. And this was back in like 1990, the movie came out, or 89. And at that point, the Cubs were awful for years. Like they didn't even have lights in their stadium for years. They had to have all day games. But I was just blown away. And I just thought it was funny that, hey, the Cubs won the series in one of my favorite movies. So from there, I was like, that's cool. I don't like baseball, but let's buy some Cubs merchandise. So again, for years, I've just been wearing Cubs hats, Cubs jerseys, Cubs t-shirts. And unfortunately, it does bring upon some conversations that I'd probably rather not be in, but that's how life goes sometimes. Other things I wanted to bring up. So this past week, I did get solicited by a random data company. Generally, I get these from time to time because my email is out there, which is obviously at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. Trying to sell me some data about how to reach different listeners and kind of who's listening and stuff like that. So interesting pieces of feedback. So weirdly enough, of people who are looking for food courts podcasts, which I didn't realize that was even a thing. This is the number 45th ranked podcast when it comes to food courts. So I guess for all your food court needs, if you listen to the first 44 top podcasts, I'm number 45. So take a listen. And let me see how I can help you out. Tell your friends if they're into food courts, this is their place to go. Wrestling Collectibles number 27. That feels a little too good, I think. There's got to be another dozen or a bunch of dozen podcasts about wrestling collectibles that are more listened to than mine. But I mean, the data doesn't lie, I guess. And here we are. Lastly, and this is not that surprising, people who search for Everyone Has a Story. I ranked number 16. Considering this podcast is called Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer, number 16 feels about right, I guess. I'm not sure how many people are actually searching for that. I'm still waiting for the call from Stephanie McMahon with her What's Your Story podcast. I wonder how she ranks with Everyone Has a Story. But here we are. So that's that. If I get any more data, I will let you guys know. Maybe we'll find a data budget. I'll go to the leadership committee and I'll see if we can get a budget for 2026 and we can buy the data and we'll see what we can do with it. Before getting into additional comments, I did want to once again plug our socials. So as always, the Instagram is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. Breaking news, we now have a TikTok. The TikTok is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. Full disclosure, I took my old personal TikTok, which I wasn't doing much with it, just posting up clips from the show and kind of rebranded it to the podcast. So if you are on TikTok, as long as it's still legalized in this country being the United States of America, you can check it out at Everybody Has a Story Pod. For all things Jeff Seltzer, as always, you can check out our good friends over at JeffSeltzer.com. And lastly, I did want to mention or remind everybody that, as always, we're available on all podcast platforms. So video is on Spotify and YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We are also on Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. Before introducing my guest for this week, which I'm really excited to talk to, I did want to talk briefly about the concept of a buddy versus a friend. So a few weeks ago, in full disclosure, I was texting with Daniel and with Marcus. And I believe I referred to one of them as a buddy and one as a friend. If I'm remembering this honestly, I think I'd referred to Daniel as a friend and Marcus as a buddy. Marcus got really perturbed and was like, hey, how come I'm only a buddy and yet Daniel is a friend? So initially I was going to be very apologetic and be like, hey, didn't mean anything by it. Because my entire adult life, I've basically interchangeably used buddy, pal, friend, all these types of things, right? Amigo, stuff like that. But then I did a quick Google search and I found that actually a buddy is a really good friend. So at that point, the entire conversation kind of pulled a 180. And at that point, Marcus turned into be, I guess, a better friend than Daniel. And then Daniel was upset. So at the end of the day, I mean, you can't make everybody happy, but we're doing what we can. I did want to bring that up largely because I got a text from my buddy Chris earlier today, who, yes, he's a buddy of mine. And he was like, hey, what's a buddy versus what a friend? Why do you keep doing that? So I wanted to kind of, I guess, expose or talk a little bit about what I was talking about, because sometimes, I don't want to get a little too inside baseball, but I also want to make sure that everybody understands what I'm talking about and I don't lose my audience. Last thing to say, and then I'll bring Marcus and Daniel on the show, is last week on Threads, which I guess is the Facebook version of Twitter or X or whatever it is, I found the perfect thread or the perfect comment or whatever, which I did post up on social media because I thought it was pretty good. It says podcasts were invented for an excuse for straight dudes to go on a date together. So I think that's probably the perfect opportunity for me to introduce my two dates for tonight. So I do want to welcome back to the show my buddies, Daniel and Marcus. Gentlemen, how are we today?
Doing well. Excited.
What's up, amigo?
Finally.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you again for joining, guys. For those of you that do or don't remember, this is appearance number 4 for Daniel. He was here a little less than a year ago for a similar topic, a week in Philly, as me, him, and my buddy Steve talked about our week in Philly for WrestleMania 40 back in April of 2024. Marcus, this is his 3rd appearance and his most recent appearance. That's good. 3 times. Very good. We're working towards the Booker T merchandise, I guess, at this point. Almost there. Those of you that remember, Marcus was on a couple of weeks ago talking about making friends via social media. Got a lot of great feedback, a lot of great kudos for it. I really enjoyed it. Most importantly, Jerry Perkal, his mom, really enjoyed it. She messaged me multiple times about how awesome her son sounds and how handsome he looked on the video too, which was great.
I don't think any of that's true. I was on the group text, so I actually know for a fact it's not. But
you didn't see the special Jerry and Jeff group text, but that's fine. I'll send you those messages later on.
Yeah, I also want to say this might be the number 4, but the first time with a theme song. So it's great to see how far the podcast has come.
Oh, absolutely.
This is my second time on with the theme song. So
is that how we start counting it now? We've got Marcus has a one-on-one podcast. Daniel has 3 panel podcasts. Marcus has 3 in total. But Marcus is leading in number of podcast appearances with a theme song. It's almost like a new season, I guess, right?
I also get a credit for every single time there's a theme song. So I should be on IMDb for last week as well.
That's right. Similar to like how Apple Music or Spotify pays. I think you get paid like 0.003 cents every time the song plays, and it has to play for at least a minute or more to get credit. So I'll go back to do the math and I'll see how much I could write a check out to you for.
I'll have Daniel Venmo me for all those.
And Marcus, I'm assuming that now you've done 3. Jeff has sent you the baseball cap as well. This is what you get after 3.
I'm getting the custom T-shirt. Don't worry.
Yeah, we're working on the custom T-shirt. We're having a bit of a logo issue that I'm working on with my logo guy. When you work pro bono with a lot of these different people, sometimes things just take more time than they need to. But between that and my daughter making it, it's a whole thing. So we'll get there. With that said, like I mentioned before, this week's episode is about a week in Vegas. So it's not about, too much debauchery or wackiness or what happened in Vegas stays in Vegas. This is about, in 2025, WrestleMania went to Las Vegas. So taking a step back, as we talked about last year when we went to Philly, years ago, WrestleMania was basically one night. It was a Sunday night in whatever town it went to. And that was pretty much it. People would come from around the world, go see it. It was a lot of fun. Little by little, it got bigger and bigger. And I'd say it's probably, I want to say 2013-ish. That was my first one that I went to in like a decade or so at that point. And the area started getting bigger and bigger, and a lot more events started taking place in WrestleMania cities. Smaller independent wrestling promoters recognized that if, let's say, anywhere between 40 and 80,000 people were coming into town from around the world, this is a great opportunity to get some of those people to come to their shows as well. So while Mania used to be just a Sunday night thing, now it's like a whole week thing. And so much so that there's, lots of independent shows throughout the week. WrestleMania is now 2 nights, Saturday and Sunday. People come in, like last year, Daniel and I went into Philadelphia, I think on Wednesday and went home on Monday. We'll talk in a second about what Daniel and Marcus's travel plans look like this year. But it's gotten much, much bigger, and towns, the amount of commerce and the economy is just like spiked significantly because there's so much money being spent. What I will say different from last year was this year I did not go to WrestleMania. This year I went on an amazing family vacation. So I was living through Marcus and Daniel's texts, which is awesome. Like, obviously, wish I could have been there, but obviously at the same time, love to see their pictures, love to experience it through them. So no real jealousy here. Just, we live different years, different lives, and we're making the most of it. So this year I'll be more of a host as opposed to a contributor. So don't let us down, Daniel and Marcus. Anything that you guys want to bring up or mention before we start getting into a couple of the key points of how you experienced the week and kind of like what you were looking forward to going into it?
I would just say one of the things that was really a challenge was the fact that you weren't there to plan it for me. So I want to start that to start with, because if anyone knows you, they know you're the planner. So I actually had to plan this, but leading up to this for like 4 months before when I decided to go, I think Jeff was more stressed about my planning than I was. So
I will say before thinking about Marcus's plans and hearing about him, I think I was literally there when you decided that you wanted to do Vegas. I think you were going back and forth, and you knew that I couldn't make it because of family reasons. But I think I was sitting there, and I might have been the one that convinced you. I was like, you know what, you should just go. Like, it'll be amazing. You'll have a great time, and I'm sure you'll find some of my other friends that are down there too, which you did, which was great. And again, Daniel, I do apologize. I did help you book some of the stuff ahead of time, getting you tickets and stuff like that. But don't worry, next year you will not have to suffer through any of that. Your personal concierge will be back for 2026, so more to come.
And Marcus did help me out by booking some of my events for me as well. So thank you.
Of course.
That's what I was actually going to say, was in terms of, what was I looking forward to,
Yes.
as well discuss as we dive in. Like, it's become more or less an annual trip for me. And what I love about it is it's not just about me and my experiences. It's about, seeing friends who I see once a year. Or in the case with Daniel, like, Daniel and I met very, very briefly at a wrestling show that Jeff and I talked about on the podcast 2 weeks ago. And that was the only time we had met in person. And then we obviously did a podcast, a couple months ago with Jeff. So that was our only interactions together. From there, a group chat started. And I mean, Daniel and I went to a show together. There was another show we weren't sitting together, but I mean, we spent more time at the bar than we did in our seats anyway. So we were together for that show as well. But it's really about, the relationships and seeing these people. And the fact, like, it's a great example of the fact that I had met Daniel for minutes at an event in New Jersey, and then we spent hours together in Vegas as part of this trip that is, one of the best parts of my year every year.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing, because as Jeff mentioned, I literally traveled on my own there. So like last year, Jeff and our other buddy was there, but this time I was super comfortable, met a ton of people, even the shows we weren't at, like we made friends, chatting to people. It's just that culture and that group. Like, people laugh at you, you're going to Vegas on your own for WrestleMania. It's like, yeah, it's cool, because there's plenty of people.
It also is a different trip. I mean, granted, obviously me being in South Carolina now, not up north, it is a different trip where it's, you're going from New Jersey to Philadelphia, where it's, a quick trip in, quick trip out, as opposed to you're like committing to flying and going, hotel by yourself. And it's just, not a hotel. It's a Las Vegas hotel. Things are more extravagant there, more costly there, what have you. But that's part of, the allure of this trip, is that you're always going somewhere else. And to be quite honest, I fully planned on sitting this year out, because there was rumors that WrestleMania was going to be in Minneapolis, and that just wasn't a trip that excited me.
Right.
But I love Las Vegas. I've been to Vegas probably somewhere between like 12 and 15 times. It's one of my favorite places in the country. And when they announced that WrestleMania was there, I immediately, like, I remember I was in a pool. My watch started vibrating. I saw it. I ran out. I booked 2 hotel rooms. I didn't know what hotel I want to stay at, but I knew there was a chance I was going to do this. Fully refundable, of course. I've learned from Jeff how to book travel. I'm pretty good myself, but fully refundable. But I was like, in case I don't sit this out. Of course, the hotel I stayed at, which we'll talk about later, wasn't either of those two. But the destination is almost just as much a part of it as the wrestling, and the whole aura of the trip. So going to Vegas for me was a big part of what I was looking forward to.
I would
last
not
Sunday.
went to Minneapolis on my own, I promise you. So.
Don't worry, Daniel. I'll go to Minneapolis with you when it does actually happen there, because at some points it will. We'll check out the Mall of America. It'll be fantastic. So before getting into briefly what you guys saw, I guess from a sightseeing perspective or touristy perspective in Vegas. So Daniel, I know one thing that I was infamous for on our trip last year was making sure that we got our steps in. Right, every time you took a walk, making sure that we started the workout on our Apple Watch. So I wasn't there to babysit or to make sure that you did. I'm going to trust, because I also did send you recently a friend request via Apple Watch, which is still pending. So I'm a little concerned that maybe we're not Apple Watch friends yet. We'll get to that level at some point. But with
Are you
that
Apple
said,
Watch buddies though?
so we're not. That's what I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for whatever, right? Maybe we have to revisit and talk about our relationship at some point, but I don't know. But with that said, were you,
Okay.
steady on whenever you took a walk, starting your Apple Watch workout?
So there is a story that could probably take the rest of the podcast for this one, but yes. So, and I actually have a step challenge with one of my colleagues at work, and there has been whatever 5 months of the year. I've only won 3 weeks of those 5 months, and I think you can guess which one of those weeks were.
Of
So, yeah,
course.
Jeff, you got me well trained. I actually stayed at the area, which was close enough to be able to walk back and forward to a lot of the venues. So yeah, I was up to the 25 to 30,000 steps each day, Jeff. But yes, I did not forget. I had my inner Jeff inside me telling me to start my workout.
Perfect. So a follow up from this is, let's hope maybe by the time this podcast airs, you will have accepted my whatever request on Apple Watch, whether we're Apple Watch friends or buddies. Not sure what level you want to accept me at, but let's do that, and we can start competing, and then it'll be a little less awkward next time that
I
we see each
didn't
other.
even realize that was a thing, but now I will look into that. So.
Okay, very good. With that said, so obviously Marcus mentioned that he's been to Vegas many times. I assume Daniel has as well. So starting off with Marcus. So from an overall perspective, we don't necessarily need to go Wednesday through whatever, like day by day, but in general, was there any touristy stuff that you did there that you enjoy, like non-wrestling exhibits, conventions, the roller coaster, anything like that you went out of your way and said, like, I want to do this while I'm there?
Yeah. So I mean, with how I stacked my schedule for the week, we didn't have all that much time that wasn't pre-booked out. But Friday night we did, and what started off as like a group text between there was 5 of us of, all right, we're gonna go out for like a steak dinner. We'll get dressed up. We'll go out. Um, then all of a sudden, by the time we finished what we were doing Friday during the day, all the text went silent. Everyone was napping. So what we actually ended up doing Friday night, it was a great time, and it's one of my favorite things to do in Vegas is the high roller Ferris wheel. It's you get great sights of the strip of the city. You can see outside of the city, especially with I hadn't been on the Ferris wheel since the Sphere has been open, and it's just an awesome scene. The other thing is on the Ferris wheel, there's an option depending on what ticket you buy where there's a bar in your pod, and it takes 30 minutes to go around once. You drink for 30 minutes, and then you do whatever you want after that. So we did the high roller Ferris wheel, and we went to In-N-Out for dinner. We
Nice.
walked a little bit around the strip, walked the Link, which is the like alleyway, or it's not, it's like a galley / strip mall that's right off the strip that the Ferris wheel and In-N-Out are in. And that was really the majority of the sightseeing I got in, other than going to Bagelmania, which is not wrestling related, but it's a bagel. It's a restaurant / bagel shop that's right next to the convention center. That's extremely well known. And with the name of it and the fact I was there for WrestleMania, I feel like I had to stop in there twice. So
Nice.
that was my extent outside of wrestling.
Very cool. So a couple of questions there. So first of all, Bagelmania, I assume, is either a bagel store or maybe like a wrestling event featuring like Joey Silver against like Barry Horowitz or something like that. Like two, Jewish wrestlers going back and forth. But I guess I was completely wrong on that one. I am Jewish, so I can make that joke out there. It wasn't offensive on this side of the microphone. Other question from a Ferris wheel perspective, you had said there is a bar aspect. Is it a cash bar? Is it a 30-minute all you could drink bar? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so there's a different price for just a ride, or if you get a ride that has a bar in the pod. I want to say the bars are like once every like 6 pods, and there's probably like 6 bar carts in the whole Ferris wheel. So it's I mean, other than gratuity, like it's all you pay for your ticket, and it's all you can drink for 30 minutes.
So is there like a bartender like in the pod with you, or interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a bartender in there. I want to say there's probably like maybe 10, 12 people. It was probably the sparsest I've ever been for my bachelor party. We had our own pod, which was 24 people plus a bartender.
Okay.
Um, but I mean, it's very calm. Like I would say everyone has, 3, 4 drinks at most. But the beauty of Vegas is you get that last drink as the doors are opening because you can walk the strip with a drink
Sure.
in your hand. But yeah, like it's not like there was like anyone like getting rowdy or anything in the pod. Like ever, you were just talking to people. Why are you there? Oh, people were there, to go to the Sphere. There was, someone else who was there for WrestleMania. That kind of thing. I was in there with two of my friends or buddies, depending on how you want to characterize them. And then after we met up with one of their dads who didn't want to go on the Ferris wheel, but did want to go to In-N-Out with us.
Nice. Very cool. And Daniel, I assume you did not see Paula Abdul this time when you were in Vegas.
I did not, and I still haven't been to In-N-Out either. So that's another.
That's a swing and a miss. So anything fun or different or touristy that you did while you were there?
Yeah, well, that was my 7th time in Vegas, and I was actually there for 7 nights. So I flew in a little bit early because I actually wanted to do some work the first day, get there nice and fresh for the evening. So yeah, so most of my time was wrestling. We'll get into that, but I was in shows most days from 11 in the morning until 3 in the morning. But I did deliberately leave the Sunday relatively free, apart from our watch party for Mania Night 2. So I did manage to get to my old haunts. I love going to the Pawn Star store whenever I go to Vegas.
Yeah.
Vegas, I went there, and then there's a couple of sports card stores right on Fremont Street.
Nice.
Made sure I got there. So that was kind of the things I did. A lot of walking, as we touched on, the steps. Walked up and down the strip, hit most of the casinos. Interestingly, walked past a lot where the new Guitar Hotel is going to be. So it's pretty cool to see the start of that building. So it'll be good to go back in a few years and see that there. But yeah, lots of walking and a little bit of old Vegas while I was there.
Very cool. Okay, so with that said, we've gotten through some of the like what's going on in Vegas perspective. Now let's get a little bit to the actual event and stuff. So I remember from my experience last year, Daniel and I went to, I believe it was 13 shows between Wednesday and Sunday. So this year, before we get into like the actual events, do either of you have like a running count of number of shows you went to? Daniel, you want to go first?
11. I was at 11.
Oh, slacker.
I know.
Only 11 this year.
No, I'm sorry.
I feel like my number would be deceiving, and this is like a big part of what makes WrestleMania what it is. Daniel spent more of his time watching actual wrestling.
Yep.
While I did go to 4 wrestling shows, just 4, I went to, a podcast as well as like there was conventions that I was at, which are, you meet wrestlers, get photos, get autographs. I went to one convention for 4 days and one convention for 5 days. So if you count those as shows on given days, then that's 9 plus a podcast is 10 plus 4 wrestling shows gets me to 14. If you're just talking about pure wrestling shows, it's 4.
Got it. So while we're on the topic then, since we're talking about the conventions, so I assume the 2 conventions were WrestleCon and The World. Is that correct?
Yeah, WWE World, correct.
And then the podcast, I assume, was the Major Wrestling Figure Live
That's
recording.
That's how we know each other, Jeff. Yeah,
that's it.
Major Wrestling Figure Podcast, exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. So a shout out to the Major Group. So getting into, I guess we can get into collectibles and what you did at those conventions and such. So can you talk through your experience at WrestleCon and your experience at the World, and kind of talk through what you did, what you got, and just kind of how you experienced it?
Absolutely. So the WWE World, as they call it for the last 2 years, is a a convention where you can go and take pictures with wrestlers. Some of those, depending on the wrestler, those pictures are included with your admission. Others, if you want autographs or if you want to meet higher end wrestlers, those are paid per person. And there's also the WWE Superstore is within that same building. That's the Las Vegas Convention Center, and that is something that's a very big part of my trip. I need to be there when that store opens on Wednesday morning, so then on Thursday morning, so I can get in the store and see if there's any limited souvenirs or anything like that I need for myself, but also I do buy those things and sell them to help afford the trip as a whole.
Right.
And then the other convention, as you said, is WrestleCon, which is put on by highspots.com, who's like the biggest vendor of wrestling collectibles, in the world. And that was at the at the Westgate Hotel, which used to be the Hilton, and that is right down the street from WrestleCon. So from WWE World. The difference is WWE World, you're meeting, there's like legends, or there's, and I'm talking like Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, like the most famous of famous wrestlers, or current WWE talent and employees. And if you go to WrestleCon, you're meeting names that work for other companies, AEW, all the independent shows that Daniel was at. Those wrestlers are there. And also some older WWE wrestlers who maybe aren't at that legendary status, but Hall of Famers nonetheless. And there's a difference in price on those, obviously. You run the gamut, but that's the difference between the two different conventions.
Yep, and there's also very, very slight overlap as well, as there are some wrestlers that will show up at both the World and WrestleCon and just have different experiences based on those types of things. So during your time between those two places, do you want to talk through some of your favorite things you did, favorite things you bought, your favorite pictures that you got as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, they were like probably a 12-minute walk apart. That being said, it is Las Vegas. Everything is bigger. All these hotels are massive. So it was like I said earlier, we didn't stay at the original hotels we booked. I stayed at the Fountain Blue, which they were billing as the official WWE hotel of WrestleMania. We picked it because I got an email that had a great deal on it, and also because of its proximity to WWE World and WrestleCon, which is where I spent the majority of my time. I would say for me, the biggest photo op I got was probably CM Punk. And then Bianca Belair was also a pretty big want for me. Jade Cargill. And these are current, WWE wrestlers. And then at WrestleCon, also I got Tiffany Stratton at WWE World. At WrestleCon, Tony Storm was a big name. That was probably the biggest, and the Great Muta.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say those were the biggest that I got in terms of photo ops. And in terms of autographs, there was Charlotte Flair, Asuka. Those were two names that I needed. I collect signed figures, so I needed signed figures. I have a belt that I was working on. Asuka's last name I needed on that. And then for me, I would say the most important meet and greet I had all weekend was getting autographs from Chelsea Green, who is the former United States champion and first United States champion for the women in WWE. And the reason that was important is because I recently have gotten my 4-year-old daughter completely hooked on wrestling. And every year prior to this year, we just put on like wrestling shirt, throw a shirt on her and my 3-year-old as well, and take a picture together. But now that she's into wrestling, she wanted to dress up as her favorite wrestler, which is Chelsea Green. So I did get a photo of her dressed as Chelsea Green signed, as well as a couple figures. I had posted the picture earlier in the week. Chelsea retweeted it, put it on her Instagram. And, for me to get that signed for my daughter is something that, as much as my wife and mom probably despise it, means the world to me. So that was definitely my most important meet. I was willing to miss anything else I had lined up on the whole weekend to get that done.
That's awesome.
The whole week, excuse me.
That's awesome. First of all, thank you for sharing. That's really, really cool. Obviously, you've got a huge passion for these collectibles, and you've got some really cool stuff from this past week. What I will add to the Chelsea Green piece is like her and her husband, Matt Cardona, are both pretty amazing. So Matt Cardona, obviously of the Major Wrestling Figure podcast, Chelsea Green is his wife. Back in 2021, everyone pretty much knows that I'm a huge Halloween Horror Nights fan, and that's in Orlando, Florida, Universal Studios. Matt and Chelsea live in the Orlando area, and they go to Universal and Disney all the time. And I randomly ran into them right before going to one of the haunted houses, and I picked them out. I was like, hey, how's it going? Big fan. Got a picture with each of them, and then I got to walk through a haunted house like right in front of them. And it was just funny because like the entire time, Matt was doing everything he could just to kind of like annoy and scare Chelsea throughout the entire house. Like for me, it was just like a surreal experience, like walking in front of them as like this is happening. But like she's amazing. He's really cool. Really, really fun. And, obviously really happy when like, people like that do make it big and cool things happen for them. So glad to see that, obviously your daughter is a fan of Chelsea's, probably one of the greatest, I would say, female wrestlers out there today, which is great. Daniel, so you did the same thing too. You didn't go to the World, but you did go to WrestleCon this year.
Yeah.
Can you talk through your experience, what you saw, what you got, and kind of like what you felt about the whole thing?
Yeah, definitely. So I didn't go to the World, but I did hit the Superstore just so I could buy you a gift as well. So I want to
So first of all, shout out to Daniel and the gift. We're drinking out of it today, the WrestleMania water bottle, which will replace my WrestleMania 40 on location water bottle. So hopefully this lasts, and I won't put it in the dishwasher. But it's been good so far. So thank you for that, Daniel.
Oh,
Please continue.
Marcus played it down a little bit. Talk about step challenge. I think it was a 1.5 mile walk from the front of the convention center to the store, but that's a different story.
That's what's crazy is like my hotel is literally across the street from the convention center, but the convention center you had to enter all the way on the far side of the building, and to get from my hotel room to the door of our hotel took 14 minutes. So it was across the street, but it was a 28-minute walk to get in.
Yeah, Vegas is crazy with the whole, they have the escalators across the street and such. And I've been there a few times, not as often as you have, Marcus, but yeah, just because you could see it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right there.
Yeah, but I also hit WrestleCon, but just for one day. So I'm a collector. I'm definitely not on the same level as Marcus in terms of pictures, and so I had a few, particularly micro brawlers I wanted signed, so I brought them with me. So actually, Tony Storm was one. The Mountie, ironically, was one.
Jacques Rougeau, shout out.
Yeah. So a couple of those, so I brought them in my my suitcase over with me in the hand luggage. So I wanted to make sure I got them. So I spent about 3 to 4 hours only at WrestleCon. I bought the 4-day package just so I had the flexibility when I wanted to go, but I got in there pretty quickly. But to Marcus's point, you've got some pretty good names, like you've got the Hardys, you've got some really big names there, and a lot of the old ECW guys. There's also a lot of the MMA guys this year as well, which is pretty cool. So I got a Josh Barnett signed. So I've never had that done before. But yeah, so that was really it. So I did go to both of them. I didn't go to the World, and I think for next year, the World is definitely something that is on our agenda for New Orleans. I think we've not done it the last 2 years, but listening to Marcus talking about how amazing it was, I think it definitely needs to go on the agenda. Just a little tip for the organizer.
Yeah, so point taken, and we'll talk about it a little bit at the very end. But yes, already working on the agenda and itinerary for next year's WrestleMania. But we'll save a minute or two at the end of this podcast to talk about that. I remember
real quick. The World is awesome, and as Daniel just said, you haven't been the last 2 years. Like just to address that. So there used to be an event called WWE Access, which was similar to what they have now, but it was much more. Every day there was like 2 big names where you would have to buy a special ticket for them, and everyone else was included. And you were meeting like it could be current champions right now, like free photo, free auto. Like it was you would show up in a line and someone would just kind of pop out. And then with fanatics.com getting involved with WWE's licensing and WWE's store, last year they introduced WWE World. And last year there was some premium autographs, and there was a lot of free autographs, and there was some free photos. And this year they really took it to the next level where there was no free autographs, but a lot more names, big names that, aren't usually attainable. Like, if you want to get an autograph from a current WWE wrestler such as Charlotte Flair, it's very tough to get. She doesn't do a lot of public appearances where she's, signing your item that you bring. That it's tough to accomplish. There was a lot of that. And then the photo ops, you pay per, they're expensive. But there's names out there like CM Punk. I've been a wrestling fan my whole life. I've never had the opportunity to meet him before, and that presents itself in this. And how they set it up, you can split that photo with up to 4 adults. So, you go with a buddy, if you will. Every wrestler's got 2 sides. You stand on the side of them, you crop your buddy out if you're not that close. If they're just a friend, not a buddy.
I eat a Sting picture from last year.
You got a better looking photo. But they have stepped up their game a lot. And I have to imagine that, they're just learning every year and building this out now.
Definitely. And so real quick before we move on then too. So from a picture perspective, so obviously like a Charlotte Flair or CM Punk costs, were let's say the NXT or the entry level wrestlers, did they cost for a picture, or was there kind of like a never ending? And I asked because I've been to Access twice. So I went to Access 2001 in Houston before WrestleMania 17 and 2013 in Jersey before WrestleMania 29. They had the paid ones. So like at WrestleMania 29, I had gotten a VIP with Punk, a VIP with Undertaker. But then I also got a free one with the Usos, where they basically just kept rotating people in and out. So I lucked out, got the Usos. They're being rotated with Rosa Mendez, who 99.9% of our listeners have no idea who she is. So I lucked out with that one. But like, how was it set up this year? Was it kind of like there was a never-ending free one, or like what?
So there's, like as I said, there's no free autographs this year. In the past, there would be like autograph row and
Yeah, yeah.
superstar row, or like a table with access. It could be like, this is an autograph table.
Sure,
There's
sure.
2 wrestlers that are out every hour. They randomly switch out. It is what it is. So the list was publicized on the app, so you would know who was appearing and at what times.
And from
And
is that
they
free
had
pictures or is that paid pictures?
both. So
Okay.
for the free pictures, there was one area called Superstar Row. That was the only spot where there was free pictures.
Yep.
But there would be 4 people there at a time, and you would
Yep.
you go through one line, and you would either get, sometimes it was 4 photos, sometimes if it was, they were tag teams out there, they would be together or not. And then you work your way through that line, and there were really a lot of people who, quite honestly, spent their whole day there.
Sure.
The schedule was publicized, so you knew what you were getting, and the line at sometimes would get quite long. There were people who would make their way through, literally just go jump back online. There were usually every hour on the hour. Sometimes there was a half hour gap in the middle. But you just do that rotation. You would get everyone who's there for free. There was even, NXT names that were paid. If you're talking about a Stephanie Backer, for example.
Julia,
She was a paid name. The paid photographs, though, they were done by a third party, and it was how they work. It was very impressive. Like, you go, they take your picture. They would tell you before you walked away if you blinked or not, or the wrestler blinked, and if so, they would have you redo it.
That's great.
And then you would get out, you turn a corner, they scan your barcode and your photos in your email, like, instantaneously.
Nice.
But so for the most part, it was paid. There was 4 free wrestlers at a time. There was between 2 to 5 blocks of the free a day. But
Yep.
like, for me personally, a name that one of my favorite wrestlers is Katana Chance, who unfortunately right after WrestleMania did get released from WWE. But when it comes to like collecting wrestling cards, like, that's who I collect. She was in the first session on that Superstar Row, and that was Thursday morning, right when they opened. Not everyone ran over there. The line wasn't that bad, but that was, a really big photo op for me, and that was free. I got that, and then she was with her partner, Kaden Carter. There was 2 other wrestlers there as well. Worked my way through that line, and then went about, my way, trying to figure out what else I want to do that day. But there was good names to be had, and there's a lot of up and comers. And you realize when you go to these events time and time again, there's a name who's an NXT name right now. They might not be the biggest deal, or an LFG name right now. In 3 or 4 years, like, they could be in the main event picture. As you said, you got the Usos for free.
Yes.
Jey Uso is the current world champ. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. Last question, that too. So the free photos, were they pro photos, or do you have to give your camera to somebody to take a picture for you?
They were done on your own device. You could either give your camera to them. They always had a photographer there.
Yes.
Or if you were going through lines with friends, you could take each other's pictures. And a lot of the wrestlers on the free line, you could tell they were just happy to be there.
Right.
If you struck up a conversation, they would, take a video with you, or you could take a video of them. I made a comment to Katana Chance about how, like, I showed her a picture. I kept my phone. I used my friend's phone for the photo, and showed a picture of, like, how excited my daughter was when she found her figure. And she was like, "Oh, let's send her a video." She volunteered it, and just like the 2 of them went and shot her a video. And it was very cool. These wrestlers were just happy to be there and be meeting fans, because from their standpoint as well, the same thing. They don't do these meet and greets that often, and when they see people like that genuinely excited to meet them, and you're like, "You're my 4-year-old's favorite wrestler," like that kind of thing, like, or there people get up there and they're shaking to meet them, like that means something to them too.
Amazing. Daniel, next year, that's definitely on our itinerary to check out, at least at one point, some of those rotations and see. Plus, I think they have some like exhibits as well, right? Like, I know last year I remember seeing like some of the ECW like entrance ramps and just different things that you can see, which are pretty cool photo ops.
Yeah, they have a ton of memorabilia from like WWE's archives. And they always theme it to where they are. So as you said last year, when they were in Philly, it was ECW themed. This year there was a lot of Triple H stuff, since he did get inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. There's like exhibits for that. There's a Tops exhibit where they give away free cards, and you can go through, and you watch a video. It was like a interactive, immersive exhibit that was pretty cool. There's a ton of stuff going on all day. There's a couple matches now and then that actually get recorded for NXT. So there's a lot going on in there. I would say it's definitely worth the price of admission.
Very cool. Last thing to add. So I think I mentioned I went to 2 accesses. I actually lied. I went to 3 of them. So I went to WrestleMania in 2001, in 2013 and 14, I went to Access New Orleans. The one thing I remember from the first Access I went to back in Houston, which they don't offer anymore, was I did fantasy play-by-play back in 2001, which was pretty incredible. So
They still do it.
they still do that. Do they
Yeah.
have it like, so let me walk you through my experience. Let me see if it's similar to it is now. So basically they had a list of like 6 or 7 different matches or events that you could call. I sat down and just randomly sitting next to me was Michael P.S. Hayes and the Goon. So I was able to call the Undertaker Mankind Hell in a Cell match with Michael Hayes or Doc Hendricks at the time and the Goon, which was crazy. I have it on VHS still. They both signed it for me. I eventually uploaded it. It's on my computer. I tried putting it on YouTube, but I guess I got a copyright strike, so I can't share that out. But it's just a really cool thing that I really love. Like, so is it you pick a bunch of matches and someone sits next to you, or is it you and a friend or a buddy?
It's you and a friend, which when I did it, the one time I did it, was at WrestleMania. I want to say it was 32 in Dallas. And that's how it was at that point that I was with a friend. But you sit down, there's, a menu of matches. You pick one, you call it, and they give you a digital file now. So I don't know how they get that to you. I did not do it this year, but you get that, but it's not with, a wrestler or WWE employee or anything.
Daniel, we're doing that next year. Me, you, and Zeta Steel are going to call a match, so we'll see what happens.
That's perfect. That works for me.
We'll talk through in a month, and we'll see how we can set that up. Cool. So definitely awesome. Definitely jealous about that, and definitely sounds like a great experience. So something to put on the list for going forward. With that said, next up, I did want to talk about all the various indie wrestling shows that go on in the area. So as mentioned, over the years, they've added more and more shows that are non-WWE affiliated, although weirdly, some of those shows are now a little more WWE affiliated than they once were. So Daniel and Marcus, I know you guys went to a bunch of shows at the group of shows they refer to as the Collective. And the first show they aired, I think on Wednesday night, was a WWE ID tournament of sorts, where for those of you that don't know, basically NXT is WWE's developmental, kind of like the minor league system. They've almost introduced like an even sub level to that, so like an entry level to the entry level called WWE ID, where they bring in a bunch of indie wrestlers who are sort of signed. I think they help them out with some money and such, and give them opportunities so that way they might be on like a pathway to, let's say, NXT. And the first show that I believe Daniel and Marcus went to together was a WWE ID show, which was part of the Collective. So I know you two sat next to each other. I was watching you guys the entire time, which I was smiling ear to ear. I was just super excited to watch it and seeing how happy you guys were there.
You were excited to watch the event, or excited to watch us?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes and yes. Like for me, I mean, again, like I'm probably a weird guy in the fact that A, I like wrestling, but B, I also enjoy watching my friends have fun, right? So just seeing you two guys kind of like going back and forth, talking, and just like having a good time. And also, right, this is one of those things where, Marcus, we talked a couple of weeks ago about meeting on social media, right? So it's the butterfly effect, right? So we met on social media. If that didn't exist, we wouldn't have met. If we hadn't met, you and Daniel never would have met. So it's kind of a thing where like I almost feel like the Godfather, where I brought you guys together via this podcast, via the Facebook group, whatever else like that. So for me, all this just made me happy. Like I'm sitting in Turks and Caicos, but I'm watching you guys at a wrestling event, which I'm just excited about. So for me, yes and yes. Happy about the wrestling, but happy about that. With that said, can you guys talk to me a little bit about the event? Like we won't go event by event for everything, but this is the one that kind of piqued my curiosity the most, because these are people that are now on TV on a semi-weekly basis. Daniel and I saw a bunch of them at a local show at PWJ back in January when I podcasted from there. We'll be seeing a few of them probably in the coming weeks as well. Just take me through kind of like your thoughts of the show, how it came together, just everything, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I can start. And also, you've not mentioned the matching shirts that we have as well. So hopefully that makes you a little bit jealous at the same time. But anyway, which we wore on various occasions. So Jeff, as you mentioned, the Collective is like a series. It's 13 shows, mostly put on by Game Changer Wrestling. 11 of them are part of a package, and then 2 you could buy individually. So Marcus is my official planner in your absence, got us great tickets for the first show. And that was a Wednesday night. So it really was like the kickoff to the whole week. So I went to like 11 events, as I mentioned. 8 of those were GCW events plus this one. So 9 of the 11 were in this format. So it was a fantastic venue. It was inside the Palms Theater. So a really traditional theater. But we had great seats.
The Pearl at the Palms, which is like a legendary like UFC venue before before T-Mobile Arena opened, and then they started doing just MGM Grand and T-Mobile. So
Yeah.
it's a great venue.
Yeah, just to add to that also, like for me again, like as an old school middle school UFC fan, I guess of sorts. Like I remember like fight nights from like 06 and 07 were there. I think like
Yeah.
the Anderson Silva Chris Lieben fight where Silva had his first event, like that was there. And like this was like Daniel and I went to the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City, which obviously, you know, has a really cool look to it. But this like had like a real feel to it. Cause like on TV, like they said, it sold over 2,000 seats for a bunch of the events. Like this looked really, really cool on TV.
Yeah, proper stage. Like last year, we went to it was a room essentially we were in for 3 days.
Yeah, it was like a place you can either book your wedding there or you can watch some wrestling there. So it was kind of a weird kind of a room.
And also, just to set up was cool. Marcus and I spent plenty of time at the bar. There was great bar facilities. There was actually a really good setup. It was multi-level. But yeah, but the event was fantastic. Really good chance to see, as you mentioned, like a couple of people that we see regularly, like Marcus Mathers, who's a superstar. When I definitely see that. What else we're thinking? Who else we see yet? Kylie Ray, who's another pretty well-known name in the indie scene, was there. Obviously, you mentioned Zeta Steel, but also
Atticus Cougar.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Atticus was there, yeah. And then a chance for people we don't normally see. Like, there's a pretty cool up-and-coming tag team called Swipe Right, who was pretty cool to see as well. But I would just say, like, for me, like, it was just fantastic. Great way to kick the week off. Like, you were great access, fantastic matches. These are guys that are, as you mentioned, in the WWE organization. So they are the future. So, like, we just watched Gunther at WrestleMania. Like, there's a chance that one of these guys can be 5 years' time where he is.
Yes.
So, and then also, I'll let Marcus touch on it, but what was really cool is at the end as well. I'm not the biggest photo op guy. I only shot my shot once the whole time and it didn't go well. We can talk about that later. We can touch on it now, but basically, so as most of you guys probably can tell, I'm Scottish. So there is a pretty well-known Scottish wrestler now called Joe Hendry. So, and I literally have probably got 20 pictures of me with wrestlers in my life, whereas you guys have probably got 10,000 between you or more. So I actually took a shot. I seen him backstage at an event. It was 1:15 in the morning. So I walked up to him. I was like, sure, why not? Had a couple of drinks. I was like, hey, Joe, how about a photo for a fellow Scot? He's like, oh, I love fellow Scots. I'm not allowed to take photos this weekend. And walked off. And then it all kind of came to fruition on Sunday when he turned up at WrestleMania. But it's a bit like, really, buddy? You're from the same town pretty much that I grew up on. You can't take a picture. So I am officially done. No more photo ops unless you organize it, Jeff.
Yeah.
Well, first off, I need to interject. That was your second attempt. We did get one photo op together with the two of us.
You got me that.
And Zeta Steel, who we discussed earlier, who, as a cheap plug, PWJ Damaged Goods 2.
Yes.
Jeff is sponsoring her match. So when, we saw her around after the WWID show, and she is, I mean, absolutely, aside from the fact that Jeff is sponsoring her match, so we felt like we should take this picture together. She is absolutely like an up and comer in terms of WWE.
100%.
She carries herself as a star in the ring, out of the ring. But yeah, I mean, as Daniel said, the event as a whole, it was awesome. Like I enjoy. This was the second time that I've taken WrestleMania as a week. I did that last year as well. Otherwise, I usually try to condense it a little bit. But the Wednesday night is like the kickoff. I flew in Wednesday morning. This was our kickoff, and they announced this show. And there was a lot of wrestlers on there that I quite honestly hadn't heard of until they became WWID names. But what was awesome about it was the fact that all these wrestlers, they call it a sloppy finish or a schmaz, but like the end of the event was basically every single wrestler running into the ring, attacking each other,
right.
And the good guys stand tall at the end. But then they all left the ring, and they just, I mean, as Jeff said, like we had good seats. They were very affordable, but we were first row. As luck would have it, we were like one seat off of the entrance ramp. And the guy who had the entrance ramp seat didn't show up. So we had the space. We were basically on the entrance the whole show. And it was these wrestlers came out of the ring, and they're in the WWE pipeline, but they're building their reputation. What they want is a Zeta Steel, for example. Like she wants every single person that took a picture with her that night to post it on social media and be like, I met Zeta Steel, and WWE be like, wow, all the fans are really hyped about Zeta Steel. So they just kind of stood out there, taking pictures, signing autographs. They had given a poster out. If you had the front row, you could get that signed. But I mean, I got a picture with, I think, every single wrestler on the show that night, with the exception of like 4, which, you know, I mean, as Daniel said, like I kind of look at him and I admit wrestling is it is my vice. Obviously, that's not an admission, but how I look at wrestling and these meet and greets is unique. It's definitely weird. Like I am not a normal person when I look at the WWE roster and I'm like, how many of these names do I need to meet? Like, and that means if I haven't met them, I need to meet them.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm going to take a picture with every single person on this card tonight. And I look over at Daniel, who's just like taking my pictures, clicking away, holding his drink. Oh, he dropped his drink, got another one, whatever else. It's Vegas. You can get a drink whenever you want. And I was like, what is wrong with you? You're not taking these pictures. Like this is the future.
Yes.
So like I admit that I'm not normal in that sense, but I got a picture with everyone except for, you know, I think 4 wrestlers on the whole card that night. And it was just an awesome way to kick off the weekend for me, or the week. And for me, the week is as much about the shows as it is about the meets. And to get that many without taking any money out of my wallet, they were just happy to do it for free is a huge win.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say last year, a similar situation. I mean, obviously, I think me and Marcus are very like-minded in terms of like just collecting pictures with wrestlers, right? Like for me, whether it be big stars or people who I see as, you know, eventually big stars, or even just people who will never be big stars, but I'm entertained by them. Wrestler Jimmy Lloyd, for example. I remember last year, the first show that me, Daniel, and Steve went to was at a bar somewhere in a random whatever in Philly. It was like in a tent. It was pouring rain.
It was a wet tent inside the parking lot off a brewery.
Yeah, pretty much. And I remember like the first 2 wrestlers that I saw were Bobby Orlando, Creator Pro Wrestler, and Jimmy Lloyd. And like for me, like this is the first show that we went to, first people I saw, and I was just ecstatic. So I got them, I got Paul London. Pretty much at that point, I was just excited to see anybody to add to my collection. My collection is not nearly as good as Marcus's, but I mean, for us, you know, this is what we do. This gives us happiness. So at the end of the day, you know, we're not buying drugs. I mean, maybe not a lot of drugs, but we couldn't afford a lot more drugs with the amount of money we're spending on this anyway. So, you know, it works out well.
My mom and wife are listening, so I want to be abundantly clear. This is Jeff talking, not me.
Agreed.
Just
yeah. And Jeff, one other thing I would probably just say on this as well is like that night was fantastic because obviously probably got to meet Marcus for the first time properly, really, as we got to spend some time, but also his buddies / friends that were there as well. Like within seconds, it was just that common goal, and like chatted through the whole match. It was just such a nice way to start the week as well. Being there on my own as well, it was quite nice to have some company for the first night.
Yeah,
that was pretty cool. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
And what I'd say was really fun too was, so obviously you guys hung out that night at the show, as did you know, Marcus's buddy Lucas and a few other people. I found a lot of pictures of Daniel when I was looking in Lucas's and Marcus's Facebook feed, because I think Lucas did a big photo dump, and I'm like, oh, here's a shot of Daniel. Other ones, I started just sending him over to Daniel. Like for me, again, it's one of those 6 degrees separation, but like it was just very fun for me, and just like I was excited seeing it. Like I was really happy to see some of my friends becoming friends with each other and just having a great time. Like for me, maybe I'm weird like that, but I mean, it was just really cool. I really enjoyed it.
I mean, and to your point, like, yeah, it was awesome to meet Daniel, hang out. I mean, I think at this point, the group text that the 3 of us have, and of course we were talking on the side about our plans and whatever else. It was great to, you know, meet and have this stuff come to fruition. But you and I spoke about it 2 weeks ago about, you know, this concept of like meeting someone online.
Yes.
And Lucas, he's my best friend. I've been to 7 WrestleManias. I've been to 7 WrestleManias with Lucas. But I met Lucas online too. So, you know, you kind of sit there and we're sitting at this event. It was literally me, Lucas, and Daniel. We had another buddy there who like he bought tickets a little bit late, and just how GCW just does their tickets in full transparency.
Yes.
Literally the first row, they put your name on seats. And like, if I bought 3 tickets, it'd be like, all right, Marcus Perkal, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
And it's all alphabetical. So it doesn't matter when you buy, if you bought first row, as long as you bought first row. So, you know, our buddy Mike, he was a couple seats down. We tried to get him closer to us because the guy next to us didn't show, but it's just total luck of the draw as to if you're going to be at the ramp or in the corner, just based off of the last name of everyone who bought tickets and how many tickets they bought and, you know, where you fall within that. So it was a very interesting, I mean, you know, experience. And like I said, the show was awesome. It started out, it was a little slow, if I'll be honest.
Sure.
And as it progressed, though, it was just like, actually, it wasn't just the alcohol. It was legitimately the wrestlers. It got better and it got better. And then by the end, when you're like, you know, and like fully enthralled, just enjoying the match, and they're just like, roll out the ring. They're like, right, who wants pictures? Who wants, you know, autographs? It's just like, it like I could not have thought of a better way to start this, 6 night. I think it was 6 nights, maybe. Yeah, it was. I think 6 night trip.
Right. Absolutely. So I know Daniel went to a bunch of other indie shows. I think Marcus, you might have gone to one or two others. Do you guys want to talk about what your favorite moments or situations were that you might have experienced or saw in some of the other shows, excluding Mania?
Yeah, I can touch up. So I mentioned I went to 8 other events. So I know we talked a lot about it last year. A lot of the same type of companies were there. There's the Japanese independent pro wrestling company DDT, who
Awesome.
every single time I see them just steal the show. It's really like it's one of those ones now. It's become like a not miss. It's always on like in an afternoon. So I actually made sure not to miss that one. That was a fantastic experience. You literally see wrestlers you don't get a chance to see that often in the US. So
Right.
fantastic opportunity. It was probably my favorite match of the whole weekend as well. Was Uni versus Starboy Charlie at that event was just incredible. If you've not watched it yet, it was unbelievable. And I should say I had with a little bit of help from some friends, I had some fantastic seats at the collective as well. So I was front row, right on the entrance ramp, end aisle for every single event. So literally every single time a wrestler came down, you can see pictures with me. I was there, unobstructed view. Jeff and I had some issues last year. We had cameramen, we had pillars, we had poles, we had chairs, we had stuff in our way. But this time, fantastic view the whole time. And the benefit of buying the package, you're in that seat for them all. So I managed to get to pretty much everything. There was a couple of clashes I couldn't go to, but a couple of events that really stand out was Bloodsport, which is kind of the MMA slash wrestling crossover. Some people might know Natalia. She's pretty famous from WWE. Natty Neihart. Getting to see her first sort of event outside mainstream WWE was incredible. The energy in that office, in that building, sorry, was probably 1,800 to 2,000 people. And it might be an office. It's her office. Yeah.
Daniel actually brought his laptop. He was actually pulling data and
he
was
was running reports and pulling Excel files during.
Guys laughed, but I was actually working on that Wednesday, so it kind of works.
That's right.
Yeah, that was just incredible. It's probably 1,800 people in the building that night, and just the energy when she was there. And I know Jeff, you've had a chance to watch it back, but that was a massive highlight.
It was amazing.
Yeah, so those were a couple, and then probably the last one. I think we talked about it last year as well. Is there's an amazing event that starts after Mania on the last night. It's called the Cluster Something Forever.
The Cluster F, yes.
They want to get you banned. They want to get you banned, Jeff.
I appreciate it.
Basically, only two.
I would like to, but I won't say.
There's only two matches. The first match is like a deathmatch cage match, which was just incredible this year, where you have I think it was 10 wrestlers in the ring. Multiple weapons, barbed wire tables, etc. But then it follows up by a 80-something person battle royale that goes on for nearly 3 hours till 3 o'clock in the morning. So, and for about 20 minutes of that, the guy that was kind of dominating the event was the Invisible Man. So I will leave that there for everyone out there that thinks that us wrestling fans are crazy and weird. I spent 20 minutes watching the Invisible Man. So there you go.
Always a classic, the Invisible Man. Also, shout out Zeta Steel was in that event as well. So obviously there she is.
The only other than WWID, the only other independent show that I went to was Progress, which similar to how you described as New Japan, or that's how the other event.
DDT.
Right, excuse me. So Progress is basically the only time that you get to see a lot of European names in the US over the course of the year. And for me, it was awesome. I mean, it started out with a match between, quite honestly, there was a tag team match and 3 guys I had never heard of. And we were out of our seats standing clapping the whole time. Lycos Jim versus Boisterous Behavior. And there was a match on that card that I actually was really, really excited for, which was Minoru Suzuki versus Cara Noir, which was the second longest match of the night, behind the main event. And the match, like everything that I thought it was going to be, it was. Minoru Suzuki is just a legend of wrestling. And Cara Noir is an up-and-comer young guy who's hasn't been to America, that often within this gimmick, if you will, or this character he's presenting right now. And it was a great time. So I really loved that. And that was the only other independent show that I went to, and I did see Daniel there again. Yeah. We had multiple trips to the bar.
That one started at midnight. That was appropriate. It wasn't an 11 a.m. That one was a midnight show, so it was appropriate for Marcus and I at the bar every break.
And I assume that Suzuki match was better than his match against Butterbean at the High Spots Super Show, right?
I haven't watched that yet, so I can't comment.
I didn't see that match, but from what I read that Minoru Suzuki said about that match, it does seem like it was better. But and also to Daniel's point, that show started at midnight,
Right.
which is late, but that was perfect. I had another event I was going to earlier Thursday night
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the same hotel. Again, this is at the Palms. So it was perfect. I went to this podcast first, and then Daniel came and met us. We got some
great
food,
people,
got some
amazing
drinks,
stuff, yeah.
Nice.
went to this match as well. Saw a couple awesome matches, and then
Then you got to meet Karanora afterwards as well.
correct, yeah, I did.
Very cool. So we do have a lot more to get into, but being that we are kind of running low on time, let's just kind of close off on a few things, and then we'll finish this off probably in a few weeks, as I'm sure I'll need more content as more of my guests cancel on me and we kind of figure it out. What I did want to throw out there was, so the Cluster F, which took place immediately following night one of WrestleMania. So I didn't watch it live. I was in between trips, whatever else like that. But when I did eventually sit down to watch it, keeping in mind it started like 11 o'clock local time, give or take, something like that. I was super excited just seeing how happy and how awake Daniel looked at the start of the show. So once again, the fact that Daniel sat first row, basically right on the entrance ramp, like I was able to watch him through most of the shots. I mean, specifically through most of the wrestler introductions. So like the first match of the two was the steel cage match. It was a scramble, lots of different guys, whatever. Just watching how happy he was, and it seemed like he was also making friends with the guy sitting behind him. It was just, again, really cool to see. And again, I enjoyed the wrestling. Like I said before, I enjoy seeing my friends having fun. So for me, this was great. And it also brought me back to last year when, me, Daniel, and Steve were at a similar event, and just remembering how goofy it was and all the stories about how we lost our seat for a few minutes and that whole spiel. Check out, it was like episode 4 of this podcast if you want to hear that. It was pretty crazy. But it was just funny to watch, really cool. And I think the show went 3.5 hours, which, because it was in Vegas, probably helped in general because it was on Pacific time instead of Eastern time, right? Like in Pennsylvania, I think last year ended at 3:30 in the morning or so. It probably ended
3:05 in the morning. It was pretty close. I think we were after 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
I think we were after 4 o'clock last year. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So I guess my timing is a little bit off, but I guess if I watched it live in Jersey, it would have ended at 6 a.m., I guess, right?
On that, Jeff, I was going to say two of the things that I loved about this year's Vegas Mania was the fact A, it was Vegas, and B, it was Pacific time. Because actually going to Mania at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and going to like Raw on a Monday, like that time difference was so different, but actually really cool.
I do remember there was one day that during the Mania week where I think I'd woken up at 6:30 in the morning Jersey time, and I was texting with Daniel as he was leaving one of the wrestling events. So he hadn't gone to sleep yet. I just woken up. So it's just funny to me that we're obviously living very different lives at this point. But it just cracked me up that he just had the time of his life at a wrestling show, and I just slept 8 hours. So
same thing. I literally texted him Wednesday morning. I had a first flight out. My flight was at I think 6:30. I texted him. I wasn't going to, but I was up, getting dressed, whatever else, took a quick shower, got out, and I realized that he had texted me 40 minutes prior, and I was like, all right, headed to the airport. He was like, oh, just got back, going to bed. But that's a huge thing, and I think that also is part of the allure for me for going to Vegas for WrestleMania, because I felt the same way when I went to LA a couple of years ago. Is it really does change things when you're going to an event and it's so early. In LA, I had actually in Philly too, but Philly was East Coast time.
Sure.
I had this big dilemma of UConn, which is I'm a diehard UConn basketball team, was in the semifinals of the Final Four in the national championship during wrestling events, and I literally sat in LA live streaming from my seat because of the time difference. But on the flip side, it's it's awesome the fact that I ended up having to change my flight out this year, which is a great Marcus story that explains how messed up I am in the head about wrestling stuff. But I had to move my flight up a couple hours. But originally my plan was I could go to Raw on Monday, which WWE Raw starts at 8 o'clock at night and goes to 11 if you're on the East Coast, but that's 5 to 8 West Coast, and I had a red eye, so I was I could literally go to this, go back to my hotel, get my stuff, and get to the airport all with plenty of time to spare until I had to change my flight time because I needed to pivot and instead of flying United, I had to fly Southwest because
Oh.
I was bringing so many figures to get autographed.
Right.
And Southwest offers 2 free checked bags. And when I was trying to figure out how I was going to mail all my stuff to WrestleMania, as I do, it was going to be about $200 a package round trip. And I realized very quickly that it was much cheaper to cancel my United flight, take the credit, and fly Southwest. So I wasn't able to go to Raw as a result. But
Marcus mentioned Raw. I honestly, Jeff, I could do a whole episode with you solo, because then I can catch up with Marcus on the solo pods on the Raw after Mania. It's kind of been a bucket list thing, but
I'll sit in there as a bystander just to make sure you don't get a solo episode. But yeah.
So Marcus can check the box to get him the credit. Absolutely. Cool. So with that said, there is still a lot more we want to talk about, but again, I want to make sure that I'm, giving it the benefit of time it needs, and I don't want to put out a 4-hour podcast this week. So before we call it a week, Daniel, Marcus, anything you want to shout out, anyone to say hello to outside of obviously Marcus's family? Shout out to Carrie and Jerry and maybe even little kids if they're listening right now.
As always, first off, Jeff, thank you for having me. I genuinely appreciate the friendship, the buddyship, the camaraderie. But the major wrestling figure podcast really, has helped me make, many friends that I wouldn't have had otherwise. My shout out every time I'm on here is if you're looking to collect wrestling cards, please reach out to me, Marcus Brandon on Facebook, at Marcus Brandon on whatnot. I am more than happy to walk you through the process of buying into a break or just wrestling cards, what's going on in the industry, the hobby, whatever else. And that's my passion. That's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus. And Marcus, thank you again, as always, as I wanted to say before, thank you for coming on, helped me out a couple of weeks ago on short notice. But again, everything that you just said, the fact that, it's been a year-ish or so, but you are one of my best buddies at this point in terms of texting all the time and just learning from and just sharing stories and such like that. So I do personally and legitimately enjoy, our interactions and our buddyship or buddiness. What would be the term, Daniel? Our buddy. Just
he doesn't know. He's not a buddy. He's a friend.
Oh,
he doesn't know the term.
I'm clear. I'm a friend, buddy. Awesome. Right. I got a load of shout outs. Firstly, Jeff, thank you again for inviting us on. And also just thank you for being so great throughout Mania. We were kind of giving you a lot of stuff, like trying to make you jealous, but you didn't bite. So seeing you happy, us being happy is pretty cool. But please, next year I need you back. I cannot do that myself.
The Jeff Seltzer Travel Agency is back in business for next year, so don't worry about that.
And big shout out, Marcus. Honestly, it was great to hang out. We had a great time there. Also got great to meet some of your buddies and friends as well. So I know it's been great getting to know you. And again, big shout out. Anyone that is interested in car breaks, Marcus is one of the best on Whatnot. Genuinely, check him out if you haven't. And keep listening to Jeff's podcast. Hopefully,
awesome.
Some more great jingles to come.
Awesome, I appreciate it. We did have another jingle, which is still kind of, I think, it's still, the censors are looking at it. I'm not sure if they can use it. Maybe in a future episode we can figure out a way to use it, but we're not quite there now. With that said, I did want to thank everybody for listening. As always, obviously thanking my guest Daniel, Marcus. Do want to thank everybody who's listening. Daniel's wife Paula, who's obviously listening right now. Again, Marcus's wife, Marcus's mom. My mom's probably not listening, so I don't want to shout at her at this point. Want to remind everybody that my Instagram for the show is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can check me out over at jeffseltzer.com. Reminder, as I said earlier today, that we now have an official TikTok at Everybody Has a Story Pod, so check that out. You can email the show directly at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. I do want to thank the laughing gas that's just been put into this room right now, but it's making me laugh pretty hard. Reminder that we are on all podcast platforms. And lastly, I want to shout out Zeta Steel. Hopefully we'll see her again in July at PWJ2. With that said, have an amazing week. Also, if you're on any of the podcast platforms, please rate, review, comment, like, and do all the good stuff. We haven't gotten any reviews in a while. It'll be fun to see some more. I'll see if I can shout out a few of those in the coming weeks if we get some more. With that said, thank you guys, and we'll talk more next week.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer.